it, the tours have really begun to enter the forest, and will be restricted largely to the narrow trails and trail intersections. Ogden's rule number 14 begins to be applicable, and that is consider anything green to be poison ivy. Then begin identifying the few things that are green that are not poison ivy. You do know how to identify poison ivy, right? Leaves of 3, leave it be. And since we have so much of it here, you really do just need to avoid contact with just about anything green. Going up the tree is some poison ivy here. Probably we don't have to go very far before we find a big dead oak tree that looks like it is still alive because of all of the poison ivy that has grown up into the top of it. So. And it carpets much of the forest floor. So just be careful. As always, be careful of your footing in the woods. Now we have walked up here onto the line marked by these Georgia markers for the regiments of the Georgia regiments of Henry B. Davidson's Brigade of Pegram's Division. This is the first Confederate force to be engaged here in the area of Jay's Mill on the morning of September the 19th. They have since just about dawn been skirmishing with some Federals. Federals who they had had some contact with about midnight, and then at dawn that contact has been re-engaged, and those Federals have disappeared off to the northwest, going out the corridor of the Reed's Bridge Road. The units of Davidson's brigade have been recalled, and they are now concentrated, resting, mostly standing by their horses, some men filling their canteens at the spring at Jay's Steam Sawmill, but they are in the area of the sawmill. Their commanders, Forrest, Pegram, and Davidson, have sent scouts out to the northwest to try to figure out what this Federal force was that they had had contact with, and if there are any more Federals in the area. And they will then send the 10th Confederate Cavalry, which is heavily Georgia, and hence it having one of these Georgia markers on this line. They will send the 10th Confederate Cavalry westward into the woods from the Jay's Mill area. And as they go probing westward, they are going to make contact with a Federal force, but not the one that they had last had contact with. Now on this graphic, which I'm in front of a couple of people, but so you might want to swing around on the other side. But on this graphic, which is one of the ones produced many years ago and used still somewhat by the Commanding General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth. The Army for more than 25 years used the campaign and battle of Chickamauga as a tool to teach officers to how to use military history, battle analysis in particular, as a professional development technique. And the course was taught by Dr. William Glenn Robertson, and therefore beginning a more than 30-year now study of the campaign and battle. Dr. William Glenn Robertson is the real expert on the campaign leading up to and including the Battle of Chickamauga. I know nothing about Chickamauga in comparison to Dr. Robertson. And now that the sun has risen in Fort Leavenworth, I hope he is sitting in front of his computer working on his book-length study since he is retired now. But I use this map or this graphic today to illustrate a couple of points. On here, this black dot near the bottom edge, the eastern edge, is Jay's Mill. That is off in that direction. north and south. Along this edge of the map is the Jays Mill Road. You've got the Reeds Bridge Road along the north edge of the map. Off in that direction, about half a mile from us. The road, of course, crosses Chickamauga Creek to the east of here off the bottom of the map, and in about 2 miles the road intersects with the Lafayette Road. Dan McCook's people have gone off of the map along the corridor of the Reeds Bridge Road. And Davidson's brigade is now in the greater area of J. Steam Sawmill. You see also the Brotherton Road. And you'll notice that these two roads from Jay's Mill are essentially going to diverge, and you have that widening angle. But if you turn it around the other way, and you are Federals advancing this way, you are essentially advancing into a narrowing space if you judge it by the corridor of those two roads. But now, the 10th Georgia Cavalry is going to push into the woods. And in this area, maybe a little bit further to the west, maybe a little bit further to the east, because the accounts vary, but in this area, they are going to make contact with some Federals. The first contact is going to be with just the advance guard or scouts of the 10th Confederate Cavalry and the skirmishers of this new Federal formation. And this Federal formation is John Croxton's brigade of Brannan's division. As a result of the good communications by Minty and Wilder on September the 18th about the approach of Confederate columns at crossing points on Chickamauga Creek downstream of the Union left at Lee and Gordon's Mill, during the course of the day, Rosecrans had become increasingly aware that indeed what he had feared Bragg might try to do, and that being get in between the main body of his army coming out of the mountains and the lightly garrisoned city of Chattanooga, that indeed was coming to pass. That Confederates were trying to march up from the south, in from the east, get across Chickamauga Creek downstream of his left flank, Crittenden's 21st Corps at Lee and Gordon's Mill, and get in between him and Chattanooga. As the 18th unfolded, those Confederates had not made as much progress as Bragg had desired, and when darkness ended on the 18th, those Confederates had been stopped short of the Lafayette Road down there along the Vineyard Alexander Road, about half mile to the east of the Lafayette Road. In late afternoon, William Stark Rosecrans issued orders to George Thomas to get some of the troops of the 14th Corps back on the road. Some of the units had already made a march on the 18th and had already bivouacked that early afternoon. Now they are ordered to fall back in and start marching northward again. Rosecrans wants Thomas to march troops essentially across the rear of part of the 14th Corps and Tom Crittenden's 21st Corps and extend the Union left flank further to the north to offset the move by Confederates to do the same thing. Now, if Bragg had not executed this plan or his plan on the 18th, would Rosecrans on the 18th or 19th or the 20th have essentially done the same thing? Yes. But now, in the afternoon of the 18th, it is more critical, and the order goes out to Thomas that this march is to be made. For some units, they do not have all that far to go, only as little as 6 miles. But what are they marching across the rear of? Part of their own corps and the 21st Corps. And many of these units have been shifting as well. As Thomas's men had come up from the southwest, they had relieved some of Crittenden's men, who had then moved further to the northeast, taking new positions along the creek. Well, moving the infantry and the artillery is one thing, but what follows along behind any of these columns? The wagons carrying ammunition, the medical wagons, the ambulances, and then, depending upon exactly how a given division might be handling its supply wagons, you may have a larger or smaller number of 6-mule baggage wagons carrying rations and quartermaster stores and other things. And so as Thomas's men started marching north, guess what they found already in many of the roads? Other Union troops. And it becomes one of the most difficult marches that these soldiers will experience during the course of the war. And it's one of the marches, or it's the type of a march that infantry soldiers just despise. If they are told they have to march 12 miles, they want to get rucked up and get on the road and make the march. Get it over with. Get it done. They don't want to march 100 yards, stand 10 minutes. March 50 yards and stand 15 minutes. March a mile and stand 10 minutes. March 2 steps and stand 30 minutes. But that's going to characterize much of that march. And to provide some light, theoretically, and to provide some warmth, since it's cold, somebody decided to set some of the fences on fire along the side of the road. Some of that probably got started by soldiers stopping, maybe kindling a little fire to get some warmth themselves, or maybe to try to warm something to eat or drink. And then the fire translated to the brush in the fence row. But pretty soon, in addition to marching through the dust that is raised off the road as they move, there's also the smoke of the burning fence rails. And it's going to be a difficult march. Absalom Baird's division leads the column, followed by John Brannan's division. And then Joseph Reynolds' division marching northward. It is not until shortly after dawn that the head of the column, Absalom Baird's division, begins to arrive along the Lafayette Road at the Kelly Farm. They will go into position, mostly facing to the south initially, facing down towards where the Confederates had crossed the creek the day before were located. As the 2nd Division, John Brannan's division, arrived, they are moved into the north end of the Kelly Field, and they are faced off, oriented mostly to the east. As Brannan's men march out into the field, halt, stack arms, and are given permission to break ranks, but stay close by the line of, or the stacks of arms, so that they can build little fires and warm some food and boil a cup of coffee. Dan McCook, having withdrawn from Reedsbridge Road, got back out to the Lafayette Road, saw the dust of Baird and Brannan's columns arriving in the Kelly Field to his south. He rode down to see what it is, and he finds George Thomas with 2 divisions arriving in the field. And what did Dan McCook report to George Thomas? There is a lone brigade out here near Jay's Mill, and the bridge at Reed's has been burned. George Thomas decides to act on that intelligence. And he orders John Brannan to have the assembly sounded, and his men fall in. And we can only imagine some of the colorful language that suddenly erupted from the north end of the Kelly Field as those soldiers squatting around their little fires suddenly had to cease their morning preparations. Some men will try to drink their partially boiled cup of coffee. Some men will try to put it in their canteens. Some men will try to carry it along with them. But John Brannan's division, 5 regiments, 2,300 men strong, advances into the woods eastward from the Kelly Field. Ferdinand Vanderveer's brigade marches north a little bit further on the Lafayette Road to the Reeds Bridge Road there opposite where the Visitor Center or Museum is today, and he then turns eastward. John Connell's brigade is told to advance eastward through the woods, kind of between Croxton and Vanderveer, but in the rear. Since Vanderveer is going a longer distance, essentially around two sides of a triangle, it takes him a little bit longer. And Croxton winds up advancing out eastward and really with no immediate support to his right or left. As he advanced into the woods, he halted and deployed his 5 regiments. 3 of them into the front line, the 10th and 74th Indiana and one of the Kentucky regiments, and the other 2 in a second line. He is accompanied with his battery, or by his battery, Battery C, 1st Ohio Light Artillery, and they push out. Major Van Netta of the 10th Indiana is given command of those men detailed on the skirmish line, and they advance eastward towards Jay's Mill and Reed's Bridge. George Thomas thinking they might be able to capture a lone Confederate brigade. But as they move into the area just to the west of where we are now, and even by their accounts, even push up into the area where we are here, Van Netta's skirmishers will make contact with that Confederate cavalry from the 10th Confederate. The skirmishers will come running back on the main line, and as the 10th Confederate sends a larger force forward, they will suddenly be surprised when, right here in the woods, right near where we are, there is a volley delivered by those 3 frontline regiments of Croxton's brigade. This will scatter those members of the 10th Confederate, who will go flooding back on the rest of the 10th Confederate, which will send most of them into a disorderly relocation back to the east. And soon, the rest of the men of Davidson's brigade, who are standing to their horses there near Jay's Mill, having heard a few shots and then this crashing volley, all of a sudden see coming out of the woods riderless horses, and then individual mounted soldiers, and even some soldiers on foot. By one account, some of those rapidly relocating the members of the 10th Confederate are heard to say, "Get, boys, the woods is full of Yankees." And indeed it is. There are the 2,300 men of Croxton's brigade. With the initial flight of the 10th Confederate, the skirmishers of Croxton's brigade are pushed back out in front again, and they will probe a little bit further to the east, but Nathan Bedford Forrest has ordered John Pegram to order Henry Davidson to dismount his brigade, and 3/4 of that brigade, again the men counting off by 4s, the number 4 man holding his own and number 1, 2, and 3's horse, the rest of the brigade on foot will in skirmish order be deployed and pushed into the woods here to try to figure out more about what this federal force is. And in this zone between here and the Jay's Mill area, you will have a growing firefight between the regiments of Davidson's brigade and Croxton's line. Now, Croxton badly or significantly outnumbers Forrest cavalry. But Croxton is not going to push his advantage. He is not going to push off to the east too far. Of course, he does not know exactly that he outnumbers the Confederates. He had been told, led to believe that it was a brigade of infantry. What's he now had contact with? Cavalry. And what else might be out here becomes the question. But he certainly is not very aggressive, particularly not relative to George Thomas's perception of trying to go out and capture a lone brigade. And a firefight at some distance in the woods is going to begin with the men of Davidson's brigade lying down on the ground in the brush, behind the trees, behind the stumps, firing at the Federals to their front. Huald's battery comes up and will be lobbing some shells towards Croxton's men. But as this contact has been made, it is certainly not what Nathan Bedford Forrest has expected. And what as Forrest realizes that there is a sizable body of Federal troops in his front, what does Forrest know that he needs? Reinforcements. And in particular, what kind of reinforcements? Since that's Union infantry, he needs Confederate infantry. He will dispatch staff officers to go in search of and to ask Leonidas Polk to free up his brigade under George Debrell so that it can come forward. He will send staff officers down to those Confederates bivouacked along the Alexander Bridge Road seeking reinforcements. And in his anxiety, as he seems to get no response, Forrest himself then rides south to the Alexander Vineyard Road. There, he finds Braxton Bragg and William Henry Talbot Shot Pouch Walker in amongst Walker's troops who are moving or stationary at that moment along the corridor of the Alexander Vineyard Road, completing their crossing of the creek at Byram's or Lambert's Ford from the night and early morning hours, or moving forward in short stages as Bragg makes preparation. Because where did Bragg still think the Battle of Chickamauga was going to open on the morning of the 19th? Down at Lee and Gordon's Mill. Failing to anticipate that the action of the 18th might cause his opponent to react in some fashion. If you do something to your enemy, what do you better figure your enemy's going to do? React in some way. And so, if you want to turn the enemy's left flank, it takes you longer to even get to the position where you might start trying to do that. What do you better figure your enemy's going to be doing in that extended time? Probably protecting that left flank more. Bragg was riding amongst Buckner's, Hood's, and Walker's troops, telling commanders to hold yourself in readiness for the order to resume the movement of the day before and attack the Union left flank at Lee and Gordon's Mill. He was talking with Walker about that when Forrest rode up. Forrest reports contact with infantry here, and Braxton Bragg, not wanting to be distracted by whatever is going on up here, wanting to be ready to launch the attack down towards Lee and Gordon's Mill, authorizes Walker to let Forrest have a brigade of infantry. They thinking that that will be sufficient to deal with whatever it is that Forrest has made contact with. And Forrest will be given Claudius Wilson's small brigade of Georgians, and he will start them northward towards this growing sound of action. David, where'd David go? There you are. For many of you all know Dave Powell, the author of Maps of Chickamauga, which some of you all are carrying along with you. There you go. Dave is along with us, and so anything you want to add right at this point? So.
No,
okay. Well, there are always, little stories and tidbits. So, what we will do a little bit later on is we will see where Croxton's monuments are, but you've got to go through the woods here about 500 yards to get to where the monuments to the 10th and 74th Indiana are. Right now, the density of the vegetation doesn't allow us to do that.
This trail peters out.
Yeah, this trail actually loops back around and comes into Brotherton Road there, so it does not take us to the monuments. On my graphic again, here you see Croxton coming in from the west. well, I can get it. Okay. And Vanderveer moving along the Reeds Bridge Road to our north, Connell coming in behind, Davidson's people in front, and then, as we're going to find out, Wilson is starting to come up.
So, I'm sorry, where on there are we right now?
Where we would be right about in here. So.
Okay.
Where is that, other than, not Jay's mill, but the other mill you mentioned, where is that, where Bragg is at?
Lee and Gordon's mill?
Yeah.
That's about 4 miles to our south.
Is that on this map here?
No, it's not on that map. Let's see, I don't think I have a map. Yeah, on that map, it's there. We are right now up here. So.
Okay. And where is Bragg located at this time?
Bragg is located along the Alexander Vineyard Road,
Okay.
and he has come up from his headquarters of the day before at Leeds Tanyard. He has arrived about dawn, and he has been riding. He has spoken with Buckner, he has spoken with Hood, he has been speaking with Walker about preparations for the attack at Lee and Gordon's mill. When first Forrest staff officers and then Forrest himself shows up looking for troops to deal with whatever has shown up here. So. Yes, sir.
What were the units down Reed's Bridge that the 69th ran into?
They
Come across?
yeah, well, they don't come across at Reed's Bridge. They are Benning's brigade and Law's brigade, Longstreet's corps. They had arrived over at Catoosa Platform area south of Ringgold, and Benning and Law had the responsibility of both getting rations cooked and guarding the railhead pending the arrival of some other troops in that area before marching westward. They are tacitly on the 18th under Bushrod Johnson's control. But he's only really able to bring his own brigade under Fulton, Gregg's brigade, McNair's brigade, and Robertson's brigade of the 6th. But he is counting on one of the Law or Benning to be able to be ready soon. They seem to have gotten to the Reeds Bridge Road area at dark on the 18th, and that's where they bivouac, just on the other side of the creek. And they will then, the next morning, begin the movement. Perhaps because of the contact at Reeds Bridge, perhaps because of some damage done to the bridge, which begins just yet another one of the many, 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 many references by both Army of Tennessee soldiers and Federals of Longstreet's people. Now, this is an accurate sighting of Longstreet's people. But because Bragg's army has been reinforced from so many different places, there are lots of people who are unfamiliar with one another. And guess what? James Longstreet shows up everywhere on this battlefield. On both sides. Everybody is reporting James Longstreet. And this is a good example of being a historian and doing historiography. This increasingly becomes the case in the aftermath of the battle. And by the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, you see even more and more and more and more of these accounts of we were fighting against Longstreet. Even though there wasn't any Longstreet person anywhere nearby. And in fact, there's one famous Confederate involved in this fight, J.W. Minnick of the 6th Georgia Cavalry, who went to his grave battling with the Park Commission that Robertson's Texas Brigade of Longstreet's command was part of the fight right up here on this line on the Reeds Bridge Road corridor on the morning of September the 19th. He mistook Ector's brigade, which included Texans, which had come from Mississippi, which was uniformed differently. He mistook Ector's brigade for Robertson's Texans. And he did have contact with a straggler or two of Robertson's Texas Brigade, which begins his thinking on this. But what he says is Robertson's Brigade is actually Ector's Brigade as it goes into action.
And despite the many references to Virginians here,
Yeah.
there are no Virginians here.
Right.
There are just troops that have come from Virginia.
Yeah.
But you see that a lot too.
Yeah.
That can be confusing.
Yeah. So
There are, but not from.
Yeah. Yeah, it starts, you really have to read some of these accounts multiple times and really start thinking about where is this guy on the battlefield when he makes this observation. Because sometimes you can figure out what he's saying by recognizing that he would have been in the area of such and such a unit.
Jim, wasn't a lot of Longstreet's people too, hadn't they been reuniformed as they passed through North Carolina?
Well, no, they actually had been reuniformed before they left Virginia. When they get the North Carolina uniforms is the spring of 1864. Now that's Glenn Tucker does say in Chickamauga Bloody Battle in the West that they were reuniformed passing through North Carolina, but that's not correct. After the campaign that had taken them into to South Central Pennsylvania and that engagement outside that small college town, upon their return to the Old Dominion, the Army of Northern Virginia had been almost from top to bottom reclothed with products of the Richmond Depot. And a waist-length jacket made out of blue-gray English Army cloth, light blue trousers, and much of this happens on the line of the Rappahannock and the Rapidan in August, and so they are very uniformly uniformed, and it is generally new clothing. Many of the troops that have come from Mississippi had previously been on the Georgia and South Carolina coast, where uniforms made in Charleston, South Carolina were made out of blue-gray English Army cloth also. And so that's another factor for why some of the troops who've been in Mississippi are mistaken by some for being Longstreet's people because of the color of and the type of fabric. But for the aficionados of uniforms in this bunch, there is a difference between a Charleston Depot jacket and a Richmond Depot jacket. So, and we won't get into thread count and stitch count. Okay, we need to move this way. To say we're going to we've actually got to go forward. We're going to pass the other group just ahead of us there. But I want you to, as we do, make note of a couple of things. You saw the line of monuments back there marking the Georgia units in Davidson's brigade. They're facing off to the west. We're going to deal with Wilson's brigade now as they come up from the south, and we're going to walk past this monument just ahead of us, which is the first of the regiments in Wilson's brigade, the right flank regiment of that brigade, and then beyond that, probably right about where the other group is, there is another monument to Wilson's brigade. We're going to walk down the line of Wilson's brigade. We can't do it perfectly straight because of the other group and some vegetation issues, but we are now essentially going to be going from the right of Wilson's brigade at one point as they pass from south to north, from the right of Wilson's brigade over towards the left of the brigade. So just make kind of a mental note of that, and we'll then gather up to talk about Wilson coming into the action.
Hey, Jim, each of these monuments, they're about, what, 300 men?
Each of the monuments is about, particularly in Wilson's brigade, about 300 men. Wilson's brigade's about 1,300 men. They, the colonel of the 30th Georgia is decidedly unhappy They were a Georgia outfit that had been doing duty in Georgia on the Georgia and South Carolina coast. As a result of the threat to Vicksburg, they had been sent to Mississippi as part of hopefully a force to relieve the garrison at Vicksburg. But now they are being sent to Bragg's army as they come from their miserable experience in Mississippi back across Alabama and into Georgia, particularly the 30th Georgia, as their lieutenant colonel will write after the war. Since my regiment was from along the line of the road, meaning the railroad, he had a large number of desertions from his regiment, and he is not very happy with the performance of his men on the trip from Mississippi to North Georgia. So the brigade is reduced in strength from what it had been in Mississippi, and here it's only about 1,300 men.
Yeah, I was feeling that's 300. That's why 75. Right.
The monuments are a little too close together, but they do reflect the. Steve, are you one of the volunteers accompanying the groups?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just with you.
You're just a volunteer.
I'm just. I can volunteer. What do you do?
Well, no. I was just handed these,
Why you?
I don't know. No, I'll get them. So.
You don't have enough crap on you.
We'll need one in a couple hours.
Oh, okay. You're later on, so yeah.
Do we need to get you a pack mule, sir?
Yeah, we just need to steal another mule from a farmer, and on my graphic again, the Reeds Bridge Road is off to the north of you. We are now along Brotherton Road, right down here, and you can see coming up from the south. Wilson's Georgia Brigade. We've deployed with the 25th Georgia on the right, then the 29th, the 30th, their marker right here, and then the 4th Louisiana and the 1st Georgia Battalion of Sharpshooters. Wilson's Brigade had been the last of Walker's troops to cross Chickamauga Creek on the evening of September the 18th and the early morning hours of the 19th. Byram's and Lambert's Ford, where Walker had diverted to, was a difficult ford to cross. It had a very rocky approach, rocks in the creek itself, and a rocky exit. And Wilson's brigade had been tasked to assist the division wagon train across the creek at Byram's or Lambert's Ford. It had taken all night to basically do that, and then on the morning of the 19th, they had advanced further westward from the creek for a time, actually deploying some troops off to the north, probably in response to hearing the skirmish fire begin up here with Dan McCook. But then they were called to the west. They will march west on the Alexander Vineyard Road and are then halted along the road and allowed to rest for a time. They will see Laws and Benning's brigades of Hood's command march past them, and then they hear this louder sound of battle begin up in this area, the fight between Davidson and Croxton. Then the order will come to march northward. They march a short distance in column up the road, turning on to the Jays Mill Road, but then we'll deploy across or in the big Youngblood fields down to the south. And in that initial deployment, they are the individual regiments seem to be spaced at some distance, and their Georgia artillery battery is placed in one of the intervals of the other regiments. But as the situation becomes clearer, as Forrest figures out more where these Georgians should strike, Claudius Wilson will receive the order to literally march towards the sound of the guns. The battle is now raging in the woods to the north of him, and the order to advance will be given. And Wilson's men will move northward from the Youngblood fields and essentially on a line as marked by the monuments. We've walked past 2 of them. There's a 3rd one here. You can see the 4th one just beyond. Now the left end of the brigade, and this with only 1,200 men, this is further evidence of the fact that they are probably advancing with more of an interval between the regiments than is even shown on the graphic here. But as they advance northward, the left end of the brigade will pass along the eastern edge of the Winfrey Field, where we parked and started our walk. But as they come up from the south, their skirmishers are going to make contact with some of the skirmishers or flankers that Croxton has put out to his south. And as word comes of the approach of this enemy force from the south, it is going to force Croxton to begin to reorient his brigade. He had been deployed with 3 regiments up, 2 regiments back, but now with a new threat developing on his south, he is going to have to turn some of his troops to face in that new direction. Commanding 2,300 men and 5 regiments in this wooded or forested environment is a challenge. And Croxton actually assigns one of his regimental commanders to take command of a portion of the line, kind of splitting the brigade. But now, in response to the approach of Wilson's Georgians, Croxton's brigade is going to begin to turn south to face this new threat. And what we're now going to do is advance ourselves kind of in emulation of this forward movement of Wilson's brigade. So, questions or observations here? All righty. Yeah.